Hello, everybody. Today I'll be reviewing Supergirl alongside a special guest, my dad, Steven, and interestingly enough, we have completely different reviews. And with that, I'll like Steven to go first.
Okay, so for the movie Supergirl, unlike a lot of what I'm reading online, I thought that this was a really good movie. And let me just begin by sort of contextualizing it. When I'm looking at superhero movies, I'm looking at films where I know I'm going to have to suspend disbelief. I know that they're fantastical. I know that they're meant to be primarily entertaining and fun, if you will. I know there are certain films that transcend the genre, like The Dark Knight, but Supergirl is not one of those, nor does it aspire to be. So within that context, I thought this was a very, very good movie. I know Jacob's rating scale is out of 5 stars. I would comfortably give this four, maybe 4.25 stars. First of all, I thought that Millie Alcock, cast as Supergirl, was phenomenal. She had great screen charisma. She was very believable. She was multi-dimensional. She was engaging and captivating, and I thought she was a phenomenal choice. Second of all, the script by Anna Noguera deviated substantially from the comic book, which is a series of comic books that the movie was very loosely based on. And I think the choices that Noguera made improved on the story, and therefore I give her credit for that. I thought the script was an improvement over the comic book, which was written by Tom King. And then finally, the director, Greg Gillespie, I thought did everything you'd want from a director of a superhero movie. The action sequences were great. We should mention that Jacob and I saw this movie in 3D. We did not mean to, but it was a very pleasant surprise. I thought the 3D experience for this movie was excellent and was a very pleasant surprise. But bottom line for me, the action sequences were fantastic. Millie Alcock, I thought, was great as Supergirl, and very entertaining, very enjoyable movie. I very much enjoyed it.
All right. And as I mentioned earlier, I am on the complete other side of the spectrum. I enjoyed it, but I did not think it was a good movie. There's obviously some good action scenes, some great entertainment, but in terms of a good movie, especially when I have something like Superman to compare with, I give it a 2.5 out of 5 stars. And to go very quickly through my criticisms, it mainly has to do with the characters. I agree that Millie Alcock did a great job as an actress, but a great actress can only portray a fine character so far. And Supergirl, in terms of what you think of her, like comically, I'm sure she's a great character. I've never read any of the comics. But in this movie, I did not appreciate, especially in the beginning, her unserious, flippant attitude, where she's obviously a drunk, and they try to make her like the strong, independent woman by going this route, which seems very cliche and one-dimensional. So I didn't appreciate that. She gets better, but I didn't love the Supergirl character, and she's almost like that for 60% of the movie. Secondly, the other main character, or the side character, I should say, Rosie, I found to be completely annoying and just this petulant character who in no way is endearing. I'm fine with the Batman Robin dynamic when it comes to these superhero stories, but at least Robin is helpful. He throws a punch here and there against, the Joker or whoever the villain is. Rosie does nothing of the sort, except of course somehow she's able to have this great scene where she's able to kill one of the bad guys, even though she's shown herself to be completely ineffectual beforehand, and then also develops like cat-like woman agility by she's like going through crawl spaces. So I didn't appreciate Rosie, and then somehow they make her like this badass character out of nowhere. And also the power scaling was off with Supergirl. I don't want to seem like I'll let Dad actually critique that point, but I think it's very obvious that there's no chance that any of these villains can stand in battle against Supergirl, especially when there's a yellow sun out. So they have to throw in these obstacles for her to jump through, but they're still not even strong enough for her to not end the movie very quickly. And instead, they have to go through like this sequence of her fighting these pickpockets, and then finally she meets the villain, and then she's not able to capture him the first time. It just didn't seem realistic to me that with her capabilities, she wasn't able to end the villain immediately. And then also with the villain, he was uninteresting in that we don't really see any of his own scenes because they understand that this isn't a villain like a Darkseid or a Lex Luthor. Instead, it's focused on Supergirl the entire time, and we're really not able to form that strong of a connection with the villain or anything of the sort. Now, I gave it a 2.5, so I didn't give it a 1. So there obviously are some positives. What I enjoyed was there was a character named Lobo who I liked. I thought he was funny, played by Jason Momoa. He was good. There are some really great individual scenes. Like, there are good action scenes. I say it's very clippable. And in a sense, that's a positive. It's also somewhat condescending, where once this film comes to TikTok, it's going to be really easy to look at the action scenes on their own. But as a narrative, I just didn't love the film. And also, I appreciated the ending where Supergirl did kill the villain and shouldn't have to adopt this, heroic code like a Batman or Daredevil where she refuses to kill her enemies. So overall, I gave it a 2.5. And I forgot to mention, I really like the flashbacks as well.
Yeah. So again, you refer to her as flippant, and I don't see that at all. She does begin the movie drinking, but as the movie progresses, we understand that she's doing so to deal with the emotional pain of being orphaned and had to leave the planet Krypton. So she goes through an arc as her character does. So I don't see it as flippancy. I see it as being authentic and real. I neglected to mention Lobo, and you're correct. He was an excellent addition to the movie. He's not in the comic that this was, loosely based on. He was great. Rosie is an important part of the movie because the whole movie starts with the villain, who I believe his name is Cream. He's a brigand, kills her whole family. And one of the things about this movie is it's very violent and has a very dark aspect to it. Again, not in the comic book, but one of the aspects of the brigands is they're kidnapping young girls to make their brides. There's murder in this movie, killing scenes, including of a young girl and her family, that I found to be extremely violent. So it walks the line that a lot of superhero movies walk, which is they have scenes of intense tragedy and violence, but then they also have to be entertaining and light. But I did not find Millie Alcock's character to be flippant at all. I found her to be authentic and real. Maybe the most vulnerable superhero character within this type of sort of superhero genre that I've seen in a long time. I found her to be much more interesting than Superman. I found this movie to be more interesting than Superman. I found the action sequences in this movie to be much better than Superman. So I'm really puzzled. I'm genuinely puzzled as to why it's received the negative response that it has from so many viewers.
Well, if I do my job correctly, hopefully I can illuminate you as to why my opinion is kind of spread throughout the internet. In that, at best, it's a mid movie. At worst, hopefully, this is the last Supergirl movie we see under the James Gunn DCEU.
So if I can ask you, because I would like to understand, what was your thoughts on the action sequences? Because I thought they were very well done.
I thought the action sequences were good and well done also. It's hard to not do a good action scene when you have obviously this huge budget and you can throw in all of the, and she has these incredible powers. So the action scenes were done well. One, it's of course her like in the bar, but the deep action scenes, like I remember when the brigands come home, where they go to like this world where she's waiting to receive them. And in that action scene where it actually means something, it's not just like a quick battle like she had with the pickpockets. The action scene, again, it has to do with this power scaling aspect where it would be done in a second. And you also have Rosie again fighting like brigands in that scene. And I feel like you don't see that much Supergirl in that action scene. But I'm happy to grant the action scenes are good. It's just, again, the characters that make it bad, as well as the fact that these action scenes have to exist within a narrative. They can't exist on their own 3 minutes. And, I didn't like that.
See, I never take this approach, but again, if we agree that the action scenes were at least as good as one would expect in a superhero movie, and I can mention many superhero movies where the action scenes were terrible, and if we agree that Millie Alcock was well cast and did a good job acting, you seem to be burdened or upset by the fact that the power scaling doesn't make sense. And
That's
my
one critique.
response to, but what's that?
That's only one critique.
Okay, but with respect to that critique, you may be right, but they do have to make an hour and 45 or an hour and 50-minute movie out of it. And Supergirl and Superman are some of the most powerful superheroes in the universe.
Right.
So if you're going to have them end, I mean, either you force them to have like the most ridiculously powerful villains, and there's only so many of those in the universe, or you have to have this sort of dragging it on a little bit and have there be fighting and other things that occur. So I mean, again, I'm not going to debate that with you if that ruined the movie, but the script I thought moved along. And again, I agree with you that the character Rosie is a bit hard to pin. I thought the actress did a good job. I thought the scenes with her were believable, but there's a lot asked of her in terms of activity and action and fighting that there's really no reason to believe that she could do. So I realize that as well. But again, that goes back to my sort of suspending harsh criticism of reality, if you will, when I'm watching a superhero movie.
All right, that's fine, but I guess we want to hone in on this power scaling point. She doesn't have to necessarily fight an intergalactic being. I'll remind you that in Superman, he was fighting Lex Luthor, a mere mortal. But the obstacles Superman had to face on that path were realistic, where he had to fight essentially an evil version of himself. There was kryptonite. I understand there was kryptonite in this film, but it wasn't used appropriately because if you remember, the Brigands choose to go on a green sun, which would weaken her powers, and we understand that they at least have some comprehension of the relationship between the color of the sun and Supergirl's strength. Yet a big plot hole is the fact that they wouldn't leave the world immediately the green sun sets and the yellow sun rises. So that was a plot hole I forgot to mention that also took away from it. So I think that maybe just the issue is I guess, asking these questions and thinking beyond what I'm just seeing and saying to myself, how is this possible? How does this make sense? And yes, if you go into the film just looking at the cool lasers and the cool colors, I'm sure you're going to love it. But for me, when I ask these questions and when I really think about these characters, that's where the criticism arises.
Well, I understand that. I guess I'm not so demanding. I understand that there has to be a certain narrative that unfolds and a certain plot that unfolds. And I also think it's a case that, if you remember in the first scene, Supergirl is on a planet that does not have a yellow sun. So she's fighting without those powers.
Right.
And when it comes time to use them, she uses them. But I guess for me, what made this movie so enjoyable relative to other superhero movies was I thought that she was just totally captivating and had a great screen presence and was believable. And I think that's really what this movie comes down to. If you don't like her or you don't think she can carry the movie, it's a tough haul. Now, you do get the benefit of Lobo, and Jason Momoa was great. But for me, I liked her better than Superman. I enjoyed watching her arc. I thought it was well done. I thought the action sequences were, as I keep saying, very, very good. And I don't know what more you'd want out of a superhero movie.
Consistency, for one. But I like Supergirl when I think of her, and just as how I have these preconceived notions of Superman, and everybody understands Superman, born on Krypton, it explodes. He's wholehearted. He's wholesome. I kind of go in with those same preconceptions when I go in to see Supergirl, and that's really why I didn't appreciate this character because maybe I don't read the comics, but I'm correct, I think, in saying that this Tom King comic was controversial and that typically Supergirl is not portrayed in this unserious manner. And I don't know of the hundreds, if not thousands, of Supergirl comics they could have selected, they went with this one.
I'm not familiar with Supergirl as a comic character. This was recommended to me. I'll give a shout out to the manager at the Comic Swap in Penn State. And the artwork by Bilkis Evely is excellent. The book itself was good, but as I said, Anna Noguera improves on it. So maybe I think where you and I have a big disagreement, Jacob, is you're characterizing her drinking at the beginning as somehow unserious and flippant. And it does appear that way in the beginning, but they address that as the movie goes on, and you can see that she's using that behavior to deal with the emotional pain that she's feeling. And so the movie explains it, and it goes from being something flippant as part of her character arc. And as you know, and it ends with her being at a similar place to where Superman is at the end of his movie, but from a different sort of path, if you will.
I understand that. I guess it's logical once you understand her backstory, but superheroes, almost part of the characterization is that they're all orphans, like Batman, Superman, Flash. So none of them had to turn to the bottle, and I just don't think that that's a good excuse to give. And I'm sure there's a lot of other ways they could have characterized her. So I guess it's just a disagreement that we
No,
have.
and that's valid. I agree with you. I almost feel as if Anna Noguera was stuck with that choice for whatever reason. Although she changed the comic dramatically and improved on it. There's no Lobo. most of the action with the brigands is different. There's none of the girls being held captive. And I guess she's stuck with the drinking part, but unlike Tom King, she actually turns it into something logical. But I get your point. But would you agree with me or disagree with me that Alcock did I'm going to say excellent job?
Yeah, again, I think that it was excellently casted. I liked Millie Alcock from when I first saw her in House of the Dragon. When I found out she was going to be Supergirl in that brief cameo she had in Superman, I was excited. It seemed like really good casting. But again, a good actress can only do so much with a, at best, mediocre script. Now, would you agree with me that characters like, and I know you mentioned that she's good at acting, but someone like Rosie, what was the purpose of her existence? Like, she didn't really need to be there, and that Supergirl already had the motive to track the brigands because they shot down Krypton. Wouldn't it have been better had they just got rid of Rosie entirely? She could have been killed alongside with her family for that need of the villain backstory.
So that's an interesting and this may be an area where the screenplay does fall short because Rosie is only necessary in the sense that a big part of the narrative, which they don't really develop as much as they could in the movie, although they do develop it a little bit, is Rosie is out to seek vengeance against the people who killed her parents.
Right.
Supergirl is out to get the antidote to save Crypto, her dog, which we neglected to mention. The brigands shoot with the poison. And so Rosie as a character only serves the purpose of exploring the issue of revenge, which is dealt with totally differently in the book. So, in most cases, I would have found Rosie to be an incredibly annoying part of the movie, but the actress, I have to say, did a good job. And it is a little poorly done in the movie, I agree with you. But there's something extremely satisfying, and this is a spoiler alert, where Supergirl keeps emphasizing to Rosie, do not kill this individual who killed your family. It'll ruin your life. Vengeance is no good. And then there's the scene where Rosie has the sword to the man's throat, walks away from it, and then really satisfyingly, Supergirl takes that sword, stabs him in the stomach, and stabs him in the throat. So yes, I understand what you're saying about Rosie, but at the end, I found the ending to be very satisfying when she did that.
Same.
Did you?
Yes, I did. And I mentioned I'm really glad that she didn't have to adopt this, Batman morality of not willing to kill her enemies, especially when we saw her kill so many people before, like throwing them out windows when they take fall
Right.
damage. So I'm glad that that happened. And again, that happened at the end. And I think that certainly for me redeemed the movie a little. Like that ending scene was one of the better scenes. My favorite scenes, if I hadn't mentioned them, were the flashbacks. I really liked seeing her backstory, and I think that is because it aligns again with my preconceived notions of what a Supergirl movie should be. I want to see her backstory. I want to understand where she's coming from. I think it's cool to see the planet Krypton, and then also
But
that
they
ending
gave you
scene.
the backstory. They did give you the backstory.
Right, and I like that. But of course, and it's fine, I guess, to interweave it where it doesn't start with the backstory, and then instead of going in chronological order, we see the flashbacks. That's fine, but of course, those flashbacks are only at best 10 minutes. So for the rest of the film, again, it's just this narrative that I didn't like, and mainly it has to do with the characters.
It's unfortunate that the movie is not doing well because I would love to see Alcock reprise this role again in her own movie. And I also think it would be really good for women and girls to have a sort of superhero like this because, as I said, I found this to be a very well developed character. I found Supergirl in this film to be a very well developed, likable character. And I'm not one for female superheroes to begin with. And I only came across this book because the guy recommended it. And then when the movie came out, we saw it. So I was really surprised because I'm almost one of these people that goes into movies with a bias against that. But I guess people are agreeing with you, you know?
Yeah, and I'll give flowers where flowers due, as you mentioned many times. I understand movies take time to develop. For example, Thor Ragnarok, that was considered one of the best Thor movies, whereas Thor 1 and 2 were terrible. So I'm not ruling out the possibility that a Supergirl movie can be done well. And if there's a Supergirl 2, I'm certainly going to see it because I do have trust and faith in the James Gunn vision. But I really hope that they can learn from their mistakes from this film and improve upon it.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying. And I would just say one final thing about this movie, which is really quite interesting. Unlike any superhero movie that I've seen, I mean, I can't think of, Jacob, a superhero movie again within this genre, not The Dark Knight and the Joker, where they had something so violent as the main brigand killing one of the young girls and her parents. That level of violence, I mean, and I'm going to say one other point, and this will potentially be really excoriated, but I don't care. There was almost something slightly reminiscent here about Ripley in Aliens and her working with the young person. Now, again, totally different movie, totally different level of complexity. But they did introduce in this movie a level of violence and realism that I was very surprised at and have not seen in anything else in the James Gunn universe or even in any of the Marvel MCU movies. I mean, that was a pretty brutal scene, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a brutal scene, but um, I actually wasn't, I guess, as taken with the violence and brutality of it. Maybe I've just become my generation sensitized to that. And perhaps they have to make it brutal to make us. Maybe that's where they try to make this villain interesting, in that we see how brutal of a guy he is, and I guess that's the route they go with. But to me, that wasn't that emotionally appealing. It certainly was surprising that he killed those the family along with the girl, but I guess you were taken by it. I thought it was just another atrocity and casualty in war. It was fine.
Well, I guess at the end of the day, what I would say is I'm glad I saw the movie for sure. I'm glad I saw it in 3D. I hope that Millie Alcock has a bright future ahead of her in films. I thought as the leading woman in this film, I thought she carried the film really well. I give them credit for introducing the Lobo character into this movie. It was a great addition. All in all, I have to give credit to the screenwriter for improving on the underlying story. So there was a lot there, and I'm still I heard what you had to say and I understand it. But if I'm understanding you correctly, you seem to be most disturbed by logical inconsistencies in some of what happens
And
there
character flaws.
and character flaws. And I guess I was able to look past that and found the movie to be very entertaining, very enjoyable. And one of the, again, just to give it a benchmark, I enjoyed this much more than Superman.
All right. And to give my final thoughts after that incredibly hot, controversial take, where I have to make it clear to the viewers, I think Superman is far superior. And certainly heard your side, so I don't want to make it seem like I'm discouraging anybody from going to see this film. I certainly think it's worth watching and making your own mind about. But I personally, I didn't think it was a good movie. I'm glad I went. At best, I think it was honestly mid. I gave it a 2.5 out of 5 stars. And my reasons for that, as I explained, were I didn't love many of the characters. I guess mainly Rosie, and the villain wasn't that intriguing to me. The plot holes, I thought there certainly were some big ones that you don't even have to suspend your belief for that much to kind of see through. In addition to the fact that, and perhaps it's just a personal thing, it went against my vision of what a Supergirl movie should look like or what a Supergirl character should appear. But with that, I want to leave the viewer to make up his or her own mind when they go see it themselves, and thank you for listening.